The second collectible with a keyboard I want to show in this series of videos is the Olivetti M10, an Italian computer which is actually a clone of the Kyocera KC85, which is a Japanese computer, and it has been cloned as another, at least two computers, the well-known in the US Tandy Model 100 and the NEC PC8300. They are not all the same. They are similar in their internals and also resemble each other in the external encasing, but they are far from identical looking, and they are not hardware compatible either. They are usually similar in their basic, but not machine compatible due to having, of course, the same processor, being clones, but not quite the same memory mapping and so on. This computer has some differences compared to the other clones in the casing, which make it perhaps a bit more suited to typing in some respects. For instance, you can pull up the screen like this. It doesn't have a very large angle, but it is enough for removing glare when you want to type, and it snaps back using a magnet. All these clones are completely solid state. Unlike the Epson HX20 I reviewed last time, they have no tape, no printer, no anything, and they store their data on RAM. You turn it on with a button here, which isn't working now, and I think yes. You see, I will explain this later, but there is another on button, which I forgot to turn on right now. You have a basic. The screen contains 40 characters by 8 lines, so it's relatively wide, although you cannot type 80 characters like you would on a typewriter. It is not extremely responsive, but if you want to use this to type, this is actually one of the best keyboards I have among my collectibles, unlike the Epson, which I like in other respects, but not so much in the keyboard. You see, if I scroll and type stuff that is not legal in BASIC, how slow it is to print the errors. Aside from changing the angle here, you can also use, as soon as I find it, you can also change the contrast. Where is it? I don't know. Here. Like in most of these older crystal displays. Let's see, this seems perhaps the best setting for the camera. Maybe you noticed before that aside from the BASIC there are a few other programs, and they are all very basic stuff. Aside from the BASIC, text is the one that lets you just type plain text, and it is very simple, nothing extraordinary. It's not by any means a word processor or anything, just simple text editor, but it's usable, and it types in lowercase by default, so it's geared towards actual typing, not so much like the BASIC in other computers of the era, which are uppercase by default. A strange positioning of the delete key makes it awkward for people used to modern computers, but it does have both delete and backspace, although they have to be shifted to change into one another. And little hair. Let's try typing. Wow, terrible. It's my fault that it's terrible, not the keyboard's. This typed quickly, and unlike the Epson, it didn't miss any characters. The Epson does miss if you type very quickly because of its very slow processor. This has got a more decent processor, although the screen is still very slow to update, so I can go on typing and it will be quick until I reach the end of the screen. You see, it had a little trouble to scroll. I keep typing this bracket, which seems like it doesn't have no corresponding opening bracket, but it's here. Strange. It does have some strange positioning instead of the backspace, because that's where I expect it. You see the way it scrolls. I think you could hear this keyboard sounds quite noisy, but in a good way, and it looks a lot like keyboards found in electronic typewriters like IBM and Olivetti itself. Olivetti made the typewriters as well as computers. In fact, it was certainly best known for typewriters at some point. Again, unlike the Epson, this keyboard has hardware caps lock, which is correctly named shift lock in this case, because it actually just locks shift, and typing the numbers with it on results in typing symbols, just like it would when keeping shift pressed. And it also has a hardware non-lock key, which makes most keys unresponsive except for these ones, which is very much like many modern laptops, in fact, which use this area of the keyboard as a shifted numeric pad. This is a U-key keyboard layout, but the Olivetti was also sold, of course, as with an Italian layout and with a French layout. If you're going to buy this, you should be careful about that, because the layout isn't settable in software, and the UK layout is of course a normal QWERTY, but neither the Italian or the French layout are. The modern Italian layout is a QWERTY in computers like this, but at that time it was more like a hybrid between the French and the German layout. So it had L here, A and Q were swapped, and I don't remember what else, but it wasn't normal QWERTY. It doesn't have, if you use the UK layout, it doesn't have a way to type accented characters. So for instance, this will just type an accent, but it cannot be combined with accented letters. But it does have, like the Epson HX20, a graph key, which results in typing some accents, if you know what they are, maps, and symbols of various kinds. So you see that in fact the full character map is not so small, and you can type a few things. there is a wide selection. The cursor keys are here, and there are 4 of them, so you don't have to shift to swap horizontally or vertically, unlike on the Epson, unlike on the Commodore 64, but they are not the same type of keys as the heavy-duty main keyboard, so they are a bit not very responsive in terms of tactile feedback, although they respond just fine in terms of actual response on the screen. It's also not very intuitive for me to have the horizontal arrows on one side and the vertical ones on the other. Other word processors and computers of the time before the current inverted T layout of arrow keys became commonplace have this one just where it is here, but the other horizontal one, the one to the right here, and these two are the vertical ones. So it's actually just like an inverted T layout, but the up arrow is flush with the others instead of being above the down arrow. That is already a bit more intuitive for me. But aside from that, this is actually cool enough to type on, and it has some document editing features as far as the software goes, nothing extraordinary, but for example, you see at the end of lines there is a terminator indicating you have no spaces dangling at the end of the line. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to have the ability to type a full 80 characters line, so you know how it will end up printed. But there is the possibility of installing additional software, so I don't remember right now whether there is a word processor that is more proper than this text editor, but there is certainly a spreadsheet, which is a version of either Antiliteram XL or 123, not entirely sure which. It is usually sold as a chip, which you install in a slot that I will show you in a minute. And you can also install programs by loading them from tape or whatever, though that's convenient as long as you make sure you don't let the batteries run out to the point of erasing the RAM, because this file is currently in RAM. It's the one I just edited. If I turn off the computer and then back on, it will stay there just as it was. One thing that I will mention, because it's not obvious and it can be annoying, if I want to delete this file, there seems no way to do this from this simple, let's call it a file manager. You could figure it's deleted using the delete key, but it actually just makes a sound. You instead need to go to the basic and type kill and the name of the file in quotation marks. Okay, it did it. It's no longer there. Other programs that are installed by default are just simple stuff. If you have a modem or rather an acoustic coupler connected, you can use the telecom program, which is just a terminal. You see these are shortcuts which are accessible using the F keys. It's not easy to figure, perhaps from the video, which F keys correspond to which shortcut, but here there are on the screen printed the names of the keys that should be used for that. Maybe you can see them now. F8 always goes back to the menu. There is an address book, very simple stuff, but apparently I first need to create, this is very They are very simple programs that are mostly based on the text editor, so I need to create a file called adrest.do spacebar, which I can just try doing, I guess. Here it is. It's empty. I believe it should probably be fine empty. Here it is. I have no idea how to use this. No idea. I won't spend time trying to find out right now. So you can install other programs that will show up here, either using a chip, so they will always stay in permanent memory, or loading them from tape, and then they will stay until you mess up with the batteries. And now I will show you, because here are the batteries. I found this very hard to open. So anyway, there are 4 AA batteries. You can use rechargeables, which I'm currently doing. That works fine. I don't remember how long they are supposed to work, but it's much shorter than the Epson HX20, which has a really long running time on battery, but it's still very, very long according to current laptop standards. These two on-off, these both say on, off and on. This is the main button, that switch that turns off the computer. You are supposed to switch this when you swap batteries in order to power a capacitor that will keep the memory contents intact for perhaps a minute at most, while you swap batteries. If you don't do that, your memory will go away, and so will your files and programs that you loaded from tape or wherever. You see this says it has 8 kilobytes of RAM, which corresponds with what the display said. It said, if you saw, it said it had about 6,000 free bytes. And here is where you can add chips. This is empty, option ROM and option RAM. Option ROM is for installing programs like the spreadsheet, while you can add more RAM, of course, here. It's important to notice the fact that there is one option ROM slot and the other ones are just RAM, so you have to choose one program or keep swapping them, which is not going to be good for the pins most of the time. For instance, let's see if I can power this on again. I can, and the document is still there. So even though I messed up a bit with the keys, the switches, to manage to keep the data in memory at this time, but I did not try to remove the battery, so that's a bit of a cheat. Aside from all this, there is not much else to say. It has a battery low warning, so you can know that if you pay some attention, you will know to swap the batteries before you lose all your documents. I already mentioned the possibility to connect tape, which is here. Unfortunately, it doesn't use standard tape jacks, and this is not an incredibly easy cable to make, and I never did try to make it. There is also a standard serial port. Not only is it RS-232, but it also uses a standard DB19 connector, which is easy to find today as well. A printer port, which is a bit less standard, and a barcode reader port. I've never seen the barcode reader. It can be powered using 6 volts, which corresponds with 4 AA batteries, but I've never tried that, and it doesn't specify the polarity, so one should be careful with that. My screen is a bit dirty inside, has some scratches and so on. In my case, I don't think I can improve it very much, but it's worth noting that with some care this screen cover can be removed and you can see the LCD directly, and so you can carefully clean it up a little if you get a unit with some dirt that has ended up inside the screen itself. So that's it. I don't have any of the other clones of the Kyocera, just this one, but I think this is probably the most worthwhile one to have, and not just because it's Olivetti, which I have other things from Italy for, but also because it's actually perhaps the nicest to type on, to view the screen, and it's also, if you like the style, I find it more elegant than the other clones that you can have a look at. And that's it. Next review, I would like to show you perhaps a Psion MC400, which is a rather different computer. It is one of the, no, it's not very early, but it's a clamshell computer, so much like the current laptops, and it also has a touchpad, which is one of the first of its kind, not working very well, the touchpad, but it's an early example of it, and it's also used with a with user interface, which is rather fully fledged for its time, and so it is probably the first combination of a touchpad and a full windowing interface on a laptop computer. It also has perhaps the best keyboard of the things I have here. This comes close, but I think I like the other one more, if nothing else because you can actually remove the keycaps and so clean them up and so on. Okay, so see you next time.